Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Atlanta, Georgia, it's time for Atlanta Business Radio. Brought to you by OnPay. Built in Atlanta, OnPay is the top-rated payroll and HR software anywhere. Get 1 month free at onpay.com. Now, here's your host.
Lee Cantor here, another episode of Atlanta Business Radio, and this is going to be a good one. But before we get started, it's important to recognize our sponsor, OnPay. Without them, we could not be sharing these stories. Today on Atlanta Business Radio, we have Sean O'Grady with Exoteric Group. Welcome, Sean.
Thank you for having me, Lee.
Before we get too far into things, tell us about Exoteric Group. How are you serving folks?
So we are a firearms education business that's based here in Atlanta, Georgia. Came about last year with the influx of training requests that were taking place from ranges across the greater Atlanta area. Lots of people purchasing their first firearm or seeking education. And so we were approached by some of those ranges to come in and help with that influx of training. And it just evolved over the last 6 months into this business. And in 6 months, it's grown pretty good to the point where we're volunteering a decent amount of time with some churches, some law enforcement groups, as well as some victims of violent crimes.
So how did you get into firearms education?
It's a long story. Try to give you the 30,000-foot view, but started shooting competitively when I was in high school around 2004. Wound up in the State Junior Olympics. A couple years later, fast forward, joined the military, spent 8 years in the Army as an infantryman. Coming out of the military, always had a passion for firearms, so pursued some of my NRA instructor certifications, and then shooting competitively and just kind of staying involved in the community. It's always been something I've been passionate about.
Now, in your work, are you... do you have your own range, or do you partner with people who have ranges? Is that an important component of your work, or are you able to train people without that? Without a facility?
That's the most stressful component of getting everything sorted out. We don't own our own range. We travel as a contracting business across the greater Atlanta area, teaching out of ranges that invite us, but primarily, we're partnered with Governor's Gun Club, both their Kennesaw location and their Powder Springs location, as well as South River Gun Club in Covington.
So now, when you partner with them, they don't have trainers, and you're the kind of de facto training arm of their business?
With Governors, we're the only outside contractor that instructs out of their facilities, which is awesome. But they do have their own trainers on staff, and they do a fantastic job. I think from the scope of what we're able to offer, we have a little bit more experience. So we are able to offer a little bit higher level of class. We also handle most of our own scheduling and most of our own booking. So effectively, we're renting space from them to host our classes.
And then you mentioned a kind of a variety of people that you work with. Do you spend the bulk of your time with the first-time shooter, or are you with that experienced shooter who just wants to get better?
The majority of the time, we're focused on that novice shooter, that first-time shooter. A lot of times, people that come to class haven't even pursued their first firearm purchase, and so we help guide them through the process, start to finish. It's a pretty comprehensive experience.
Well, let's talk about that, since that's where the bulk of your work comes in. What are some things people should know, before getting their first gun or before taking their first class?
Stay away from gun stores would be the first thing I would tell you. It's unfortunate that the employees there, where people would see them as the subject matter expert, they're more along the lines of a salesperson. And if we look at sales, because my career prior to this has been in sales, we look at them as a salesperson who, let's say, Glock or SIG or any other manufacturer might have a spiff that they give back to these salespeople and say, hey, if you sell X amount of this product a month, then we'll give you a free this or that next month. So rather than going into the store and saying, hey, what do I need? And then getting that great guided response, they're typically guided into the spiff that's going to get that employee, that free, whatever it is. So I would say the best thing you can do to educate yourself is jump on YouTube and find some really good content. There's a ton of great instructors out there. Lucas Botkin at T-Rex Arms, Travis Haley, Aaron Cowan at Sage Dynamics. They're all great people, and they all give great advice for free. And we'll be bringing that to the table here shortly with the launching of our page. But really do as much research into it as you possibly can before you just jump off the ledge, so to speak, and jump into your first purchase.
So would it be appropriate to say that if I was considering buying my first gun, it might be better to get a lesson from you first than it would be to just go to a gun store and buy something?
Yeah, we would encourage that. Everybody's body shape and makeup is different. My hand might be bigger than yours, versus your hand might be bigger than your wife's. And so what works for her doesn't work for you and doesn't work for me. It's all a very personal thing. And we don't want you to just pick something up, because I hate to say this because people think about it in the inverse, but shooting should be comfortable. Where most people think, hey, this is going to be this hugely uncomfortable experience. Don't make it more uncomfortable than it needs to be by having a gun that's too big or too small. It needs to bring you the most amount of comfort possible.
And then what are kind of, again, for the first time shooter, if you don't know what you don't know, like what is the ramification of choosing the wrong gun?
Again, it's just a comfort thing. Something, if you are, for a lot of females, we'll use this as a great example, right? A lot of the guys that they're going to work with at gun stores, or a lot of people in general that don't have the best information or the most up-to-date information, would say, well, for a female, they have smaller hands, so they're going to want a smaller firearm. We've worked with young ladies that have bigger hands, and so they need a bigger firearm. And when you put a smaller firearm into someone's hand, they're having to sacrifice their grip, and then sacrificing their grip is more felt recoil. More felt recoil makes the whole experience less pleasant. So we really try to get these people to understand through what we call guided discovery, which is allowing them to experience it firsthand and kind of teach themselves, what works and what doesn't, not just, hey, take my advice.
And when you're working with these folks, I would imagine when they work with you, all of a sudden a light bulb comes off that, hey, this doesn't have to be the way that I thought it was, that I can ease myself into this safely and get the knowledge, and I'll have the confidence that I need in order to be kind of good at this.
Exactly. And that's kind of one of the mottos that we have within the business is we're trying to develop safe, confident, and proficient shooters. Within comfort, you'll find a little bit more confidence. But if we allow for a more uncomfortable experience or atmosphere, then you're not going to develop that confidence as quickly as you should.
So now in your work, what do you need more of? How can we help you? Are you looking for more students? Are you looking for more gun ranges to work out of? What could we be doing to help you?
Ranges are always great. The biggest thing for us is getting students that are willing to set some of their hesitations aside. And there are countless hesitations that prevent people from seeking that education. Right now with COVID, not everybody wants to leave their house and be around other people. So I understand that, that's a hesitation or something that's preventing them from coming out and seeking education. But some of the other ones are actually the judgment that people perceive, that the other students in the class are going to judge them based on their ability. And because of that, they don't want to come out. So trying to reach students through a medium like this and say, hey, everybody's level is different, yet everybody's level is a lot more similar than you think it is. And it's a very judgment-free environment. We want you to come out and we want you to take this information from us and then be able to take it home and then pass it along to, friends and family members. That's really the biggest thing for us, that and reaching some of the folks that we do, some give back with. And so two of those big groups that we do some give back with would be trying to reach people who have been victims of maybe a firearm related crime. That tool, which is all a firearm is, becomes a symbol for these people of fear. And so we want to help them overcome that by immersing them at their speed, at their pace, in a class that's dedicated strictly to them a few times a year. And they're able to take that negative and develop a little bit of confidence and get rid of some of that apprehension, which is awesome. And then the other group that we work with is churches. We've written and I hate to have had to have written this class, but active shooter in the house of worship. We live in some unfortunate times and have some unfortunate circumstances occurring. And so we wrote the class out of request by a church in the greater Atlanta area. And then I stepped back with my business partner and looked at it and said, hey, this isn't something that we should be capitalizing on from a financial standpoint. We'll offer this class to every church in the greater Atlanta area that wants it at zero cost. We come out to them and, we pass that information along to them.
Yeah, because education is so important when it comes to a subject like this, and it shouldn't be something where people are, like you said, fearful or they're intimidated by. And I think a lot of folks think everybody else knows everything, and they're the ones that don't know, when in actuality, it's probably the opposite. Most people aren't as educated as they need to be.
Well, the saying exists, the only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. And so the perception I think a lot of people have, especially here in the South, is that I don't need to carry a gun because the likelihood of someone else carrying it if something happens is higher, which is false. We can see in a lot of the shootings that take place that they're not stopped by that good guy with a gun. So it's incumbent upon us to go out and seek that training and be able to protect ourselves and our family and our friends. And the other thing that we hear a lot of is I don't necessarily need to get this education. If the situation arises, I'll rise to the occasion. And it's the human condition that we never rise to the occasion. We always revert back to our level of training. So if you have none, then there's nothing for you to rise to. So we just want people to understand that a lot of these perceptions that they have, these misconceptions, there's nothing wrong with seeking this. Your friends, your family shouldn't look down on you for the stigma that comes with being a gun owner or a responsible gun owner. We really encourage this, and it's kind of a touchy subject, unfortunately.
Now, if there's a group out there that wants you to come and speak to them, whether it's a church or one of those kind of support groups, or if there's an individual that wants to learn more and educate themselves, is there a website?
Yeah, our website is under construction and it'll be back up within the next 15 to 20 days. But it's pretty easy. It's exotericgroup.com. And then they can also reach us directly via email at training@exotericgroup.com. And we welcome any and all inquiries. We're very giving of our time. Not everything has a monetary value placed on it. And in my opinion, education is one of those things where it's not something that you're always trying to capitalize on. Like I said, within the space for for churches to take our active shooter in a house of worship class, there's no cost, and we'll come to you. If you or a loved one of yours has been a victim of a violent crime that's involved a firearm and they want to get over that fear, there's no cost, to come out and work with us or us to come to you and work with you. And then we also volunteer our time monthly with the Georgia Tactical Officers Association, and we volunteer a class to them based on whatever their need is. So, like I said, it's not always about monetary value.
Well, Sean, thank you so much for sharing your story today. You're doing important work, and we appreciate you.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me back on the show. It's a pleasure to be here and speak with you.
Now, once again, the website is Exoteric Group. When it becomes live in a few weeks, it's EXOTERIC group.com. Sean O'Grady, thank you again for doing the important work that you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. This is Lee Cantor. We'll see you all next time on Atlanta Business Radio.
Today's episode of Atlanta Business Radio is brought to you by OnPay, Atlanta's new standard in payroll. To learn more and get your first month free, go to onpay.com.